The defending Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. They've been running through everybody this season, only one loss. And when you look at it, the toughest thing to do in any sport is to repeat. And of course, they're going to have to put that on the line when the road to the Lombardi Trophy begins, starting, January 16th. But with me, my guest representing the Kansas City Chiefs as a fan, Jeffrey McCoy. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule.
No problem, brother. When you asked me to do it, I was like, definitely, man, anything for you. Good dude. Definitely want to get on here and talk about my boys. First time doing something like this, so I'm excited.
Yeah, and I hope that you're not going to be too nervous. I know that some people, when it comes to getting on, especially when it's something live, people freeze up. Some people, it's just like, there's no camera on.
Right. Yeah, I don't have no problem being on live. I've gone live before. I try not to, but, definitely want to get on here, talk about some football. I love football, my favorite sport, so super excited.
How long have you been a fan of the Chiefs, and really, what was the reason that you're a Chiefs fan?
So I would say I was in high school when I started really getting into my sports teams like that. And it's funny, I grew up, most of my family were Cowboys fans and never understood why, because none of them were from Dallas or even around the area. I guess because it was the 90s and everybody was, they were winning, so that was just a team to root for. And so at some point I was like, I'm not rooting for the Cowboys. And I was like, well, I got to pick a team. And just so happens that first couple years of my life, I was in Kansas City. So I was like, I'm going to pick them, not knowing the record, not doing too much history. When I chose them, I was like, I'm just going to go with them. I'm going to rock with them. So, started watching them, you know what I mean? Always was an entertaining team to watch, but very heartbreaking team to watch as well. You know what I mean? We always had a good running game back with Mahomes, Larry Johnson. Those guys back in the day, obviously Jamal Charles, obviously those guys. And then, of course, the human joystick with Hall and all those guys back then. Obviously, Tony Gonzalez, one of the greatest tight ends ever. Those guys, Dwight Bo, just all those guys that I got to watch growing up. And then, of course, that was just my team. And I enjoyed watching them. And even though when we did get to the playoffs, we always had those first round exits. It was just like one of those things, we're going to get there one of the day. We were always missing that piece, and that was always our quarterback. Always missing the quarterback. We always had subpar quarterbacks. I remember Matt Castle was the guy I thought we were going to get, and he was going to do something because he came from that Patriots system, and obviously that didn't work out. He took a lot of money from us.
Yeah, I know a lot of people can talk about quarterbacks who stole money from teams. What's the most memorable moment as a Chiefs fan? I know it seems like the obvious is going to be the Super Bowl win, but is that it, or is it something else?
Actually, it was when Mahomes had set the touchdown record. I remember that season because that was really one of those seasons where I was like, okay, we're about to really do something. He was just running over everybody, and he was just a overpowering runner, and I just love watching him play. That was probably my most memorable. Obviously, the Super Bowl is the most memorable, but if I had to talk about something other than that, it was probably that the season where Mahomes set that touchdown record before that year. It was like him and LaDainian Tomlinson were always going at it in the games when we played against the Chargers. It was just a good season.
Expectations going into the season, the odds are that no one was thinking, well, they're going to have a Super Bowl hangover. They're going to miss the playoffs. Now, it looked like it was far from that. But to you, what were your expectations?
It was scary at first because, we had that controversy with Tyreek Hill. And then we picked up Mecole Hardman in the draft. And my whole thing was like, okay, that's just a plug and play. He might not be as good as Tyreek Hill, but he definitely had the speed, and it showed promise there. So I was like, I know, we get a few pieces. Then we grabbed the running back, and I was like, okay, I wish we picked up somebody on defense, but I was like, our offense is that powerful that we can, do what we did last year, basically rely on them, and our defense just needed a couple stops. So I was like, yeah, we're definitely going to be in the AFC Championship, hopefully the Super Bowl again this year.
You had to feel good that these guys are making the playoffs. The West is there to be won. I guess there were automatic expectations that we're heading back to the playoffs.
Right. Yeah. I knew we were going to win our division. I didn't see anything in the division that made me think that it was going to be anything different as far as pickup accusations. Obviously, early on in the season, I seen the young Chargers kid. He came out and he balled on us, Herbert, and I was like, okay, they might be a little bit of a contention. And obviously, that noise died down. And then, of course, the Raiders, they beat us. They gave us our one loss. But, people are always like, oh, you guys lost to the Raiders. I was like, Raiders always give us a hard game. We're in the same division. It's a division game. I look at it like, you look at other big teams, the Steelers, Ravens, some of the other AFC teams, they always have a hard time with their own division. Even the Patriots, they always, they were always losing to the Dolphins. So, it felt like one of those games, giving a little bit more respect to the Raiders because they definitely have a good team, in regards to them winning against us. But I was like, they won't beat us twice.
I know this is a question that's really pretty academic, but I have to ask it anyway. Was there a point you were worried about the Chiefs not making the playoffs?
Never. Not once. I didn't see it. Looking at the schedule, like I said, especially the way we played against the Ravens early on, the way we kind of came out and were just running and, ran up the score at the beginning. And then, of course, they came back. They made it a halfway decent-looking game. But, for us to be able to do that, that was the team that I was gauging our team off of. Like, at the end of the day, the Ravens were, they were the best team in the AFC last year. So that's how I gauged my AFC chances of making it back to the playoffs.
Did you feel at one point, especially with the talk of Brady going to Tampa and things like that, did that make it more feeling that it could be a cakewalk in the conference, or was that sort of like on sigh of relief?
Yeah, him leaving the Patriots definitely made it seem like it was going to be a lot easier. Unfortunately, the Patriots, 20 years of killing. When you see a team like that leave and head out of the AFC, it was ours to run. At the end of the day, we were just a Super Bowl champs. When we played against the better teams, we beat them. So, it was just one of those things that it was for us to lose.
Looking at the playoffs, who are the teams that you feel like you match up the best with?
In the AFC, honestly, I still think it's the Ravens. At the end of the day, they still have a good defense. And if they get their running game going and can keep the ball out of our hands, they're definitely going to be a problem. And then also in the AFC is the Titans. They gave us a scare, obviously, last season with going up 17. And I was thinking with that running game, the game was over. Obviously, Mahomes decided to do a little magic and get us back in the game. But, those are the two teams that I'm worried about in the AFC.
Who's the team that you're most worried about? I know a lot of teams are getting hot. The Dolphins are in there. The Browns are in there. And everything's still trying to settle itself out. I mean, even the Colts as well. Who do you worry about?
I don't want to play the Dolphins again because they caused a lot of turnovers for us, and we shouldn't have won that game in reality. Like, they really balled that first half. Obviously, we ran off 30 points in a row, which is, we had to do what we had to. Like, that's not something normal. But as far as, to pick our team 3 times, we can't do that again in the playoffs. So that would be the team that I would be most worried about is the Dolphins. Actually, and forgive me, I keep on forgetting the Bills. Bills are scary. They got a good all-around team. Bills are real scary.
I know that the big mark against Andy Reid always was he could never get over the hump. And he could never get over the hump and never could win the big game. I know it haunted him in Philadelphia. And it looked like for a while, especially after the season before last, that AFC Championship game against New England, that it was going to be just as good to get to the conference championship game, can't get to the Super Bowl, and then not be able to win it. With Andy Reid getting that burden off his back with that Super Bowl win, do you feel like now it could lead him to change his legacy as one of the best coaches at one point not to win a Super Bowl?
I think his legacy is already solidified as one of the best coaches. He had great seasons with the Eagles, regardless of whether they won or not. I was always a fan of Andy Reid's. I think that now that he's done that, you got to think to lose to the Patriots that went on to win the Super Bowl in Mahomes' first year on a messed up defensive offsides play, you can't even really knock that to Andy Reid. In that case, that was just a mistake that obviously turned into something else and then a coin toss. And I think that for him to basically, since him and the combination of him and Mahomes, which at least be together for the next 10 years, they've been to 2 AFC championships in a row and got a Super Bowl out of one of them.
And it seems like the Chiefs have a bunch of replaceable parts. They've lost guys like Kendall Fuller. They lost a few other guys. Kareem Hunt, that was huge regardless. I mean, what everybody's thoughts are on Kareem Hunt, what happened, it played a huge factor in figuring out, okay, what are you going to do to replace that? But it seems like they just kept on rolling and it's interchangeable. What does that say about the front office and just being able to find those guys that can fill those supplementary roles?
I look at it, especially on our offensive side, if you looked at us in the past, basically since Andy Reid's been there, we've always had, even when Jamal Charles got out, when you seen his replacements come in, they would come in and put up 100-yard games, every single one of them. And then, it was just really, we would plug and play with them. But as long as we had our pieces in place, as long as you got Mahomes on the field, you really don't have too many of the issues. And the fact that we have guys like Tyreek and Kelsey stays pretty healthy for the most part. Tyreek, he had one season where he's out for a little while, but for the most part, he stays pretty healthy. And then, we got 5 receivers that can score on you. Watkins, Robinson, McCole Hardman. I think the addition of Le'Veon Bell is slowly turning into something that's going to be great. You know what I mean? We forget he was a Pro Bowl running back, and he's just learning the system. So I think come playoffs, he's going to really be ingrained in that system. And then, of course, Hilaire, he'll pop off some good runs for you. I think he hit that rookie wall towards the end of the season, and he's just kind of getting over that. But the fact that we added Le'Veon Bell kind of helps out with that. Obviously, speaking of plug and play, we did lose Williams, who was arguably, the MVP of the Super Bowl last year. He went out because of the COVID thing, and definitely replacing him was a big deal. But then again, he was, like I said, he was a backup running back normally for the Kareem Hunts. And obviously Kareem Hunt was a big loss. Look what he's doing over in the Browns as a backup. He can put up starters numbers anywhere. So
I think that everybody sometimes wonder, will there be a regression with Patrick Mahomes? Because, you put up MVP numbers that are basically like a video game, and you think, can you go any further? Even if anybody can call his numbers last year a regression, that's still a pretty good regression that any quarterback would have.
Well, look what happened to him last year. He had a knee injury that people thought he was going to be out to the playoffs, and came back after like 3-4 games and went on to win a Super Bowl. Most players, if they had an injury that, to their knee, thing like that, a lot of times they'll be out for the season or they're never the same. And he was making plays still with his legs and everything. I think with Mahomes, just because of his ability to be able to throw in the pocket, he's a pocket passer first, but he uses legs when necessary. He doesn't use them just to use them. And I think that he's smart without getting hurt. He doesn't take a lot of big shots if he doesn't have to. So I think there's going to be no regression there because he's smart enough to play a pocket passer if he has to, especially when he gets older.
Now, the moment we've all been waiting for. I know this is something that always piques everyone's interest. Prediction for the Super Bowl, the AFC champion, the NFC champion, and the final score.
I think the AFC champion is going to end up being the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know why, but, they're just a great team. And then I think for the NFC championship, this one's a hard one for me. Okay, I have 2 answers. I have an answer of who I want to see in the NFC championship for revenge reasons. And then I have who I think is actually going to be there. I'll go with who I think is actually going to be there. I think it's going to actually end up being the Saints, just because they have such a good defense and their offense is obviously great as well. I think that, like I said, they played us well last week, and I think that if Drew Brees stays healthy, I think they have a good enough defense to slow down Green Bay and win it. And obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers haven't had an answer for them all season. Who I'd like to play is Tampa Bay, just because I think we owe Brady one.
It's interesting. That is the second prediction of New Orleans against Kansas City. Everybody's been pretty much riding the wave of we're getting a Super Bowl 1 and 2 rematch between Green Bay and Kansas City. That's what I've been hearing and seeing so far.
Yeah, that would be definitely nostalgia-wise. That would definitely be a good game. We owe them one for that too. So I'd love to see us play them and beat up on Aaron Rodgers as well, since, right now, obviously the MVP race, if you look at it, it's really between those 2 guys, and to beat them in the Super Bowl will solidify Mahomes as one of the greats.
Do you want to give any shout outs to anyone? Do you have anything you want to promote or anything as well, or social media that you people can reach out to you?
Since we are talking about football, I would just like to give a shout out to TJ Bryant and his team and what they're doing for the kids in this area as far as football is concerned. And then, of course, another thing dealing with sports, just the basketball, Andre Collins and what he's got going on. Shout out to the Y Comical Youth Basketball League that's going on, what they're doing, good things playing over at the Civic Center. If you haven't had your kids in that, put them in that. I think that's a dope program. Obviously, I don't have mine in there anymore since I moved to Virginia, but I definitely think those are some good things that are going on the shore, and definitely promote those things. And then, of course, you can find me on social media under my name, Jeffrey McCoy, or you can find Instagram is King_TEA50FIFTY. And that's also the same on Twitter. Nothing else, just a shout out to those guys that are doing a lot of good things in the community sports wise, and those programs that are going on. There's probably more programs, but those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head right now.
And TJ, we've had on definitely a friend of the show with the Salisbury Rhinos and things I'm looking forward to. And I'm hoping, and I know this is just me trying to reach out. I need to reach out to Andre. I want to talk about his career because he's had an amazing career, especially, we always look at the thing about the Eastern Shore where, everybody uses the excuse. A lot of people can't go anywhere and things like that. And when you can see a whole bunch of people who've made it so far, it doesn't matter if it's, Upper Shore or down here, Delaware, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of folks we've seen who are making it, off the shore.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of people. It's always cool to know those guys and see what they're doing. It's exciting to watch when you do get to see them on TV, especially a lot of these young guys coming out and playing.